What's up nerds, my name is Abdul Nafe and welcome back to a brand new video. And in this one we're going to be learning how to make this amazing 3D render. Now this tutorial is made for Blender beginners who have very little experience inside of Blender 3D. However, you will be expected to know the basics like navigating the viewport, using the move tool, rotate tool, using the edit mode, etc. And as far as Unreal Engine is concerned, again you just need to know the basics like how to move stuff, how to navigate the viewport, and you don't need to actually create your own materials because we're going to be using a pre-made material pack. And even if you are an experienced user, you will still find this tutorial very helpful because it's filled with small useful tips and tricks. Apart from that, I'm going to be showing you my whole 3D workflow including modeling, importing any models, texturing, lighting, and rendering. So if you want to take your Blender skills to the next level, then this class is definitely for you. See you in class. Also, by the way guys, if you want inspiration or ideas for your future 3D projects, then be sure to follow me on Instagram at Nafe3D. I post all my 3D work there, and on my stories I post my process and sometimes short tutorials on how to make the stuff that I make. Recently I made this 3D forest inside of Unreal Engine 5. And apart from that, yeah, just be sure to follow me over there, and you will also get notified whenever I post a new Skillshare class or a longer format course. And apart from that, if you want feedback on your art or you want to give feedback on my art, then be sure to DM me or comment on any of my posts and I'll be more than happy to respond to you. And apart from that, yeah, let's start the video. Alright guys, so we are inside the beautiful world of Blender 3D, and here we're going to be creating that amazing headphones which you saw in the intro. Alright, so first of all, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be deleting everything, including the default cube obviously. And by the way, just save your project so you don't lose your progress of deleting the default cube. So first of all, we're going to be needing some references, and obviously you can do this without references, but I'm going to use references for these. So I have these references right here. This is the front view and this is the side view. So these are actually renders of the headphones which I created myself, and the reason why I'm telling you this is so that you know you can create headphones without reference as well, but that's obviously going to take a lot of trial and error and it's going to take a lot of time. So for this tutorial I'm just going to be using this reference, but obviously you can make your changes, and in fact I would suggest you to make your own changes so that you are actually learning and you're not actually blindly following a tutorial. So yeah, without any further ado, let's start. So what I'm going to do to actually bring these references inside is I'm just going to select this and I'm going to drag this. By the way, I'm going to be attaching these references in the project section of this class so you can easily download them. And once this is inside, I'm just going to be selecting this reference and I'm going to be pressing Alt-R to reset the rotation and Alt-G to reset the position. So that's going to be perfect. And I'm just going to be rotating it 90 degrees in the x-axis, so R, X, and 90, and 90 degrees in the y-axis as well, so that in the z-axis as well, so it's facing us. Actually, I'm going to undo that so that we have this x-axis like that in the horizontal. I'm going to model it like that, and let's import the other reference as well. I'm just going to bring this, and make sure you do not drop this in on top of this reference, because if you do that, it's actually going to replace that reference. So I'm just going to drop it somewhere outside. Alt-R and Alt-G. Yeah, so I'm just going to be rotating it 90 degrees in the x-axis again, and this time I'm just going to be rotating it 90 degrees in the x-axis, something like that. Perfect. So if I go to my front view, you're going to see this is perfect, and if I go to my side view, you're going to see that is cool as well. However, one thing which I'm going to be which I'm noticing is that I'm going to be rotating it 180 degrees in the z-axis because it was facing the wrong direction. So now it's perfect. So this is going to be the front side of the headphones. You can see it has these buttons right here, and if I go to my front view, you're going to see that is perfect as well. So I'm just going to make sure that the scale of these references is correct, which currently it is not. So you're going to see this reference is much bigger than that, and I want these points right here, to match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go I'm actually just going to scale it down. So press S and scale it down slightly like that, and just make sure that the bottom is scaled, the bottom is on the correct axis as well. So I'm just going to be going to this orthographic mode so that I can properly see which if it's aligned properly or not. I'm just going to be moving it down in the z-axis slightly, and then I'm going to be scaling it up. Perfect. I think it is pretty good. Yeah, I think this is aligned properly. Yeah, perfect. So let's go back to our perspective mode, and now our references are basically perfect. So this is the front view and this is the side view. So let's start modeling. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be adding a mesh, which is going to be a cylinder, And by the way, before we start modeling, let's reduce the opacity of these references so that we can actually see our mesh as well. I'm just going to be selecting the reference. Let's go to these image properties, and we're going to go to opacity, and we're going to be, first of all, we're going to be checking it, and let's reduce it to something like 0.3. Perfect. And I'm going to be selecting this, and I'm going to be doing the same exact thing as well. 0.3. Perfect. So now if I go to my front view, and if I rotate this something like that, and if I place it like that, let's go to our edit mode by pressing tab, press A to select everything, and let's actually scale it down in the x-axis, but not in the global x-axis. You're going to see if we scale it down in the global x-axis, it's going to scale it down like that, which is not something we want. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to be switching to local. So now if I press the local x-axis, you're going to see that it's scaling in the wrong direction. But if we select the z-axis, you're going to see this is scaling down exactly the way we want it to. So that's perfect. And so something like that should be good. Let's turn on this X-ray mode so that we can see through this mesh. I'm just going to be moving it something like that. So just align it properly. I think something like that should be pretty good. Perfect. So now we're going to be applying a subdivision surface modifier to this because we want it to be smooth, and right now it's sharp, which is not something we want. So I'm just going to go to my modifier menu, and we're going to be adding a modifier. This is going to be a subdivision surface modifier, and you're going to see if I switch out of X-ray mode by pressing Alt-C, you're going to see that it looks absolutely trash, which it is supposed to look like, because we haven't really adjusted the polygons and the topology. So we're going to do that. Let's press tab to go into edit mode, and I'm just going to be selecting the face mode, face select mode, and we're going to be selecting the top face, and let's actually inset this a little bit. If we inset a face, you're going to see that it's going to get rid of that weird shading which was happening. So if I select this and inset it again, you're going to see I'm just going to left click right there, so we're going to be insetting it a little bit. Now if I go to my side view, and actually what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be doing this. I'm just going to be eyeballing it, so I'm going to be insetting it again, something like that, and then I'm going to be pressing E to extrude, and I'm going to be extruding it inside, because obviously we want to make that whole. So I'm just going to be extruding it a little bit, something like that, and then I'm going to be extruding it again to make the topology sharp. So something like that might be good. Let's switch to X-ray mode so that we can actually see what's going on. Something like that should be good. Let's extrude it a little bit again, something like that, to make it pretty sharp. And I'm going to see this is actually looking pretty good. However, one thing which I'm going to be doing, actually, you know what, let's get rid of this, let's hide this side reference for now because it's annoying us a lot. So I'm just going to press H, and I think that is looking good. However, I think we should have inset it a little more. So with this face selected, I'm just going to be pressing Control and plus on my number pad, which is going to select it more, and plus again, and plus one final time. Now if I press again, you're going to see it's going to select this outer part as well, which we don't want. And with that selected, I'm just going to be scaling this down. Something like that should be good. Probably. Yeah, something like that should be pretty good. Perfect. So once that is done, actually I'm just going to select this interface, and I'm going to be pushing it a little back, just a tad bit in the local z-axis. And let's actually extrude this once again so that this inner edge is pretty sharp, just the way we want it to be. And by the way, I'm just going to increase the levels viewport to 3 in this, and in the 3 in the render as well. And now let's work on the back side of this, okay? So I'm just going to press tab to go into edit mode again. Let's select the face, and this time what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be insetting it again, so something like that. Just try to match the reference as closely as possible, and if you're not using a reference, then just go with your instinct and just do whatever you think is best. And I'm going to be insetting it once again. Well, actually, let's undo that. I'm going to be showing you the reason why we're insetting this. So right now you're going to see that we're having this weird shading. We're having this weird shading right here. I'm not sure if it's very visible or not, but sometimes in the render it looks a little annoying. So I'm just going to be insetting it once again, which is going to solve that issue. So you're going to see the shading is absolutely perfect, which is pretty good. So now I think that is pretty good. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to be right clicking this and shade smooth, which is going to make it look pretty good. And I'm just going to be going to my vertex menu, and I'm going to be going to this normals, and I'm going to be pressing this auto smooth right here. Now this is going to get rid of any weird shading issues which we have sometimes, although I don't think we had many shading issues this time, but sometimes you do have them. And one thing which I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be selecting I'm going to be going to edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting alt clicking this edge to select this whole edge loop, and I'm going to be moving this a little back in the local Z axis so that we can get a little more curved shape. Something like that should be good. Obviously we can make adjustments later on, and I'm pretty sure we will make a lot of adjustments later on. And yeah, you're going to see this weird shading is happening inside as well. So I'm just going to be selecting this inside face, go to face select mode, select this inside face like that, and I'm going to be insetting it again, which is going to get rid of that weird shading issue, and now it's perfect. So what we can do is that we can actually go to our modifier menu, and we can add a mirror modifier. So a mirror modifier right here. So you're going to see that it is actually not doing anything. So the reason for that is because we don't have any object set as the mirror object. So I'm just going to go to my add mesh, and we're not going to be adding a mesh this time. We're going to be adding a empty plane axis. Okay, now this is going to be in the center by default, which is exactly what we want. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to mirror my mirror modifier, and I'm just going to be setting the mirror object to be this empty. Now you're going to see that it's automatically going to apply it's automatically going to mirror this on the other side. So it's not going to be properly aligned from this side, which is perfectly fine because obviously our adjustments our measurements are going to be different, and I'm just going to ignore that for now. But we're going to see later on if it looks too weird, then we're going to be making some adjustments, but for now it's perfectly fine. And apart from that, let's move on to this next step, which is making this part right here. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be creating another cylinder, and I'm just going to be moving it like that, and I'm just going to be rotating this like that. Something like that should be good. And I'm just going to be scaling it down, something like that, rotate it slightly, and then I'm going to be scaling it up in the local X and the Y axis. So I'm just going to press Shift X, Shift Z, which is going to scale it in the X and Y axis. So you're going to see this is perfectly exactly what we want. So S, Shift, and Z to basically ignore the Z axis and scale it up in the X and the Y axis. So that's perfect. And apart from that, let's just modify the what do you call them, the geometry. But before that, let's add a subdivision surface modifier. So I'm just going to go to add modifier and a subdivision surface modifier. Perfect. So I'm just going to be going to face select mode. Let's select this face. Let's inset it. Actually, before that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be increasing the opacity of this a little bit because I think it's way too low. Something like that should be good. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be insetting this a little bit. Something like that. Scale it up a little bit. I think that should be good. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be selecting this edge. Oops, I'm going to be going to my edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting this edge loop right here by pressing Alt and selecting that, and I'm going to be moving it in the local Z axis, just a little bit like that. Perfect. So it's going back. However, you're going to see it is not perfectly aligned with the bottom as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be rotating it slightly, even more, and let's actually scale it up as well. And let's move it something like that. So that's much closer to our reference. Obviously, you don't need to make it perfectly perfect. You don't need to make it perfectly aligned with the reference. But the way we're going now is good enough. All right. So I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there, so that we can actually no, I'm not going to add a loop cut. Let's just select this face, this outer face. Oops. This face right here, and I'm going to be insetting this. Actually, first I'm going to scale it down a little bit because the outside part is a little smaller, and then let's inset this, something like that. So now you're going to see it is pretty close to our reference, but it's not perfect. So for that, I'm going to be increasing. First of all, I'm going to be increasing the levels viewport to 3 and the levels render to 3 as well. And I think it is pretty close to the point where we can basically just let it pass. We don't need to have it absolutely perfect, of course. But this by the way, this outer part is actually this same exact mesh which was extended out. So I'm gonna just make that now. Let's insert this, something like that. Yeah, something like that should be good. Let's extrude this a little like that, and let's insert this, of course. That is way too much. Scale it up, just something like that, and then extrude it out again, something like that, and scale it up. Extrude it again, and then scale it down. Insert it. Actually, not insert it. I'm not going to insert it. I'm just going to be scaling it down like that. And we're going to be dealing with this outer portion later, but I'm going to be adding some loop cuts back there. So I'm going to be adding one right there to make this edge sharper. And I'm going to be adding one inside this as well, like that. And one right here as well. Because this is basically metal or plastic. And that's not really very soft. So I'm going to be making these edges pretty sharp. So I'm just adding some loop cuts here and there to make this much more sharper. And I'm going to be, let's add a loop cut right. Oops. Let's add a loop cut right here as well. Okay, so now if I actually go ahead and I turn on my reference, my side reference, you're going to see that if I just increase the opacity a little bit, actually I'm just going to make it 1. You're going to see, if I hide this, if I hide these meshes, you're going to see that this part actually has this ring, which is basically just making it look much better. I'm not exactly sure why it is there, but yeah, it just looked good, so I just added it. I'm just going to undo this. Let's hide it again. And to make that ring, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting this face, and I'm going to be insetting it, something like that. Insert it a little again, and then once again, like that. And I'm going to be going to edge select mode. I'm going to be alt selecting this edge, and I'm going to be moving it in the local z-axis just a tiny bit, and I'm going to be extruding it back to make this very sharp. But you're going to see this is way too thin, so that's not exactly what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to undo this. Let me just undo this. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to be inserting this a little bit again. Alright, so I'm just going to insert it again, press I and do it again, just a tad bit, something like that. So with this done, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be going to face select mode, which I'm already in, and I'm going to be alt selecting this, but I don't want to select this. I'm just going to be alt clicking right here to select this whole line. I'm just going to be bringing this back in the z-axis, just a tad bit, something like that, and maybe even extrude it a little bit to make it thicker. Now you're going to see this line is pretty well defined and it's pretty thick, which is exactly what we want, although I'm just going to make it a little sharper. I'm just going to add a loop cut right here, something like that might be good. Yeah, that's perfect, cool. Although we could add another loop cut right there as well to make it a little more well defined. Yeah, something like that is pretty good. Okay, perfect. So apart from that, I think we are basically done with this part as well. And if I go to my front view, you're going to see, oops, if I go to my front view, you're going to see it's pretty similar to the reference. So we're doing a good job copying it. And yeah, now let's start with making this part right here. So for that, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to create a torus to make this part right here. And I'm just going to be adding a torus, mesh, torus. And we have a torus right there. But this is way too, I think it's way too thick. So I'm just going to press this button right here, torus, it's going to open these options. And we're going to increase this, actually we're going to decrease this minor radius to something like that. I think something like that should be good. Now I'm just going to go to my front view. Let's place it right here. Let's scale it down. And I will be rotating this, of course. Something like that. Scale it down. And that should be pretty good. Cool. So I'm just going to be placing it something like that. And I'm going to be scaling it down. Although we can scale it up in the local y-axis. rather the local z-axis, something like that, to make it look a little better. I think something like that should be good. We can probably reduce size and scale it up in the z-axis, just like that. I'm just going to place it right there. Okay, perfect. So apart from that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be creating another cylinder, which is going to be this part right here. So I'm just going to go to add mesh cylinder, scale it down, bring it right there. Obviously this is some basic modeling part. You can obviously feel free to skip this if you are comfortable with modeling, but if you have any problems with this, just be sure to start a discussion down below, and I'll be more than happy to help you. I'm just going to be GZ, just bringing this down, something like that. Make sure that it's not visible, which it is. I'm just going to be bringing it even down, something like that should be good. And I'm just going to be selecting these, and I'm going to be moving these up. Perfect, something like that. Let's yeah, okay, so let's actually, what do you call it, let's extrude this, something like that. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting going to the face select mode, and I'm going to be first of all I'm going to be turning on the X-ray mode too, so that I can select the ones select the faces at the back as well. And then I'm going to be selecting all these faces, and I'm going to be pressing E and S to scale it up, but I'm going to press Shift Z to only log it to the X and the Y axes. I'm just going to be scaling it up, something like that. Now you're going to see this going to look like that, and it looks pretty good. So next up, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be leaving this right here. So there's going to be one part, and now this top part is going to be one whole thing, which is going to go to the end, and this foam part is going to be another thing on its own. Perfect. So I'm just going to get out of the edit mode. Now let's do some cleaning up. I'm just going to be reducing this opacity of this reference, and here you're going to see that this ring is actually way too thin. So I'm going to be going to edit mode, and I'm going to be turning on the X-ray mode. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to the top view. I'm just going to be looking at it from this angle, and I'm going to be going to edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting this middle edge loop right here. So the one right in the middle, not that one. I think it's that one. Yeah, perfect. So with that, oops, this is actually the one on the outside. I want to select the one on the inside. Yeah, I think that is, yeah, that's the edge loop. And I'm going to turn on this proportional editing, and if I scale this down, you're going to see that first of all the radius is very high. I'm just going to be scrolling my mouse wheel up, and now if I just do this, you're going to see that this torus is actually going to become pretty thick. Something like that might be good. Yeah, that is perfect. Cool. So I'm just going to get out of my edit mode, and now I'm actually going to throw this inside a subdivision surface modifier, and I'm going to increase the levels to 2 and shade smooth. Perfect. That is done. And apart from that, let me just do the same exact thing with this. Add a subdivision surface modifier. You're going to see that this is going to go mad, and I'm just going to be fixing this. Go to face select mode, bottom face, and inset it slightly so that it's that it has definition. And I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there, just like that. And I'm going to be adding one right there as well to make it pretty sharp. Now this part is obviously metal, so it has to be super sharp. It shouldn't be very smooth. However, obviously we don't want it to be 100% sharp either. Just add a loop cut right there as well. That should be it. Right click, shade smooth, and that is perfect. So I'm just going to be, let's look at it from the side view to make sure that it's looking good, which it is. Perfect. So next up, I'm going to be creating this top part. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be adding a mesh, which is going to be a cube actually. So for that, I'm just going to be scaling this down. Oops, I accidentally pressed H, which hid it, which is not something we wanted to do. I'm going to press G and bring it here, and I'm going to be scaling it down, something like that. Let's bring it right there. Let's scale it up a little bit, something like that, and again something like that should be good. All right, so I'm just going to go to edit mode, and I'm just going to be selecting these this top face, and I'm going to be pressing G, Z, move it up like that. And let's first add a subdivision surface modifier to this subdivision surface modifier, and I'm going to be increasing the levels to 3 in the viewport and in the render as well. So now I'm going to be adding a loop cut down there, something like that. And I'm going to be okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be first of all I'm going to be extruding the top. So I'm just going to go to my well, let's go to the vertice select mode, vertex select mode, or vertice select mode, I don't know what it's called. And I'm going to be extruding this. So I'm going to be extruding this something like that. Just move it, and now I'm just going to go through this whole path, and then we're going to be making adjustments to it after some time. And because I'm going to be adjusting the scale as well. Extrude, something like that. Scale it down a little bit. GZ, oops. And just move this right here. So just try to follow the reference as closely as possible. Let's rotate this, something like that. Like that. Let's turn off proportional editing, and I think it is looking pretty good. It's going pretty well. Okay, so and then I'm going to be extruding this again, something like that, and just move it right there. Rotate it and extrude it again. Just make sure that you're following the reference. And now I'm going to be extruding this something like that. I'm just going to be leaving it right there for now, and we are going to be adding a mirror modifier, and we're going to be clipping them together. We're going to be joining them together after some time, but not now. So for now let's go to our side view, and let's make sure that this is aligned with the reference from the side view as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be pressing tab to go to edit mode, and one thing which I'm going to be doing is that this is a little forward. So I'm just going to be bringing it a little back. So I'm just going to be pressing G and Y, oops, G and X, sorry, to align it with our mesh. Perfect. So now I'm just going to select this, and we are going to be going to edit mode, and I'm going to select this. And so for now, for this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to press S, and if I scale it up, you're going to see it's going to scale it up in all axes, which is not something we want. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to press S and Y to only scale it in the Y axis, which is exactly what we want. Perfect. So that is done, and I'm going to be scaling this as well. So just do this individually with all of the, what do you call them? I don't think I pressed Y, did I? I didn't. I forgot to press Y in this. SY, scale it up, something like that. Select this, SY, something like that. Same with these, SY, and perfect. And same with this as well, SY. We are going to be fixing this later on. We're going to be making it look good later on. I'm just going to leave it there for now. That is something what you want. Perfect, cool. So you're going to see this actually looks pretty good. But one thing which you're going to notice in our reference is that if I go to this side of our reference, you're going to see that this part has actually this this line in the middle, which is separating it, which is making it look a lot more realistic in my opinion. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be going to edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting this edge loop, and let's bevel this, Control B, just bevel it a little bit, and then I'm going to be pressing E and S, and I'm going to scale it down a little bit, and I'm going to be extruding it again to make it sharper. Okay, extrude and S, something like that. Now if I get out, you're going to see this is looking pretty good, isn't it? So that is perfect. And apart from that, I think we are pretty close to our reference. Yeah, it's pretty similar to our reference. And one thing which we're going to be doing is that if you take a look at this, you're going to see that this whole part is a circle basically. This whole bottom is rounded, which is not something we want. So I'm going to add a loop cut right here to make this part sharp and the other part loose. And it's going to make this top part look a lot more realistic as well. I'm going to right click this and shade smooth, and you're going to see this is looking pretty good. So now let's do the other side of this headphone as well. So first of all, let's just select this, and let's add a mirror modifier to this as well. Mirror modifier, this object is going to be that empty, So now you're going to see this is not mirroring in the x-axis. So I'm just going to turn on the z-axis, and it's actually mirroring on the z-axis. I'm just going to turn this x off, and that is perfect. So apart from that, yeah, I think we're pretty good. I'm just going to select this part, and I'm going to be doing the same exact thing with this as well. Mirror, and select this empty. Perfect. And this part as well. Right click, mirror modifier. The object is going to be this empty. Make sure that it's on the other side as well. It is. And lastly, this torus as well. Mirror modifier, empty, and make sure that it's on the other side as well. It is. Perfect. So now we are basically done with, we're almost done with the modeling part actually. I'm just going to select these two, and I'm just going to turn on this clipping on. So and next what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my vertice select mode, and I'm going to be selecting this, and let's extrude this. And I'm going to see if we bring it, if we rotate this, something like that. And now if we extrude this, you're going to see that they're not actually going to intersect. And the reason for that is because we have this mirror modifier on top of this, we have this mirror modifier below our subdivision surface modifier. But if I drag it on top, you're going to see that it's actually going to merge them. So the reason for this is because when we had it before, the subdivision surface modifier, what it actually did was it applied the subdivision surface modifier first, and then it was mirroring it, which didn't allow it to merge into each other, right? So I'm just gonna select this, and I'm gonna bring it a little back. Actually, we can just delete these vertices so that we have these as well, just so we have just these. And I'm gonna be dragging this mirror modifier on top, and let's extrude them and let's merge them. Perfect. Cool. So now you're going to see this is looking pretty good. However, I'm just going to be moving it slightly up in the z-axis. Perfect. Perfect. Cool. So this is basically done. Let's make sure that it's same from the side as well. Okay, now let's work on this foam part, right? So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to be adding another cube, and just bring it, just scale it down and bring it on, bring it there. Scale it down, move it up in the z-axis, something like that, and just scale it up as well. Perfect. Cool. So that is perfect. And let's add a subdivision surface modifier to this. Let's make the levels 3, of course. Right click, shade smooth, and for this what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be I'm just going to start working with the topology with these vertices. So I'm just going to be extruding this, something like that. Let's bring it down, extrude again, and I'm going to be bringing this down as well. Let's rotate it and extrude again, just something like that. And this time I'm just going to be selecting this vertex right here, and I'm going to be bringing it down like that. And I'm going to be selecting this one, I'm going to be bringing it something like that. We are obviously going to be making tweaks to this later on. Let's select this and bring it there. Make sure that it's uniform from all sides, and we're going to do the same exact thing on the other side as well. But instead of that, what we can do is that we can just add a loop cut in the middle, and we can just select these vertices and we can delete them, and then we can add a mirror modifier to this. Mirror modifier, but I'm going to be applying this before the subdivision surface, so let's make sure that it's fine. Okay, it is causing some issues in this in the shading. So I'm just going to turn this on, this auto smooth on. We're just going to fix them for the most part, but let's try dragging the subdivision surface modifier on top of the mirror modifier, which should fix the issue. Perfect. So I think the shape is pretty good. Let me just select all these. Oops. Let me just select all these, and let's bring them down in the z-axis a little bit. Something like that should be good. Now let's add some loop cuts. Let's actually go to the side view and let's scale it up in the y-axis, something like that. And now you can see these weird shading issues. I'm not exactly sure what's causing them, so let's just go with the flow, and we're going to fix them later on. Okay, so let's add a loop cut right there, something like that. I'm going to go to the side view, and we're going to be Firstly, let's rotate this a little bit. Let's bring it back, something like that. And this is not looking that great, so I'm just going to be going to the front view, and let's modify this, something like that. Just make sure that it's not intersecting with that. Well, I mean, it is intersecting, but just make sure that it's not what do you call it, it's not visible from the top. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this clipping on so that we can have these merge into each other, something like that. Let's select this and bring it down. Cool, so that is looking pretty good, and I'm just going to be making some minor adjustments. Let's tweak this from the sides. Let's bring them there. Let's bring this part a little back, and I think that is fine for the most part. Let's just move it a little back as well. Something like that should be good. Perfect. So for the back, I'm just going to be doing the same exact thing. Select this, rotate this a little bit, and just bring it back like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be extruding this instead of adding a loop cut. I just extruded that. I'm going to be selecting this hole, and I'm going to be moving it back slightly. Oops. Yeah, that should be pretty good. And I think that is basically it for this. Let me just tweak with this. Now, obviously, this is totally personal preference, and you can make as many changes as you like. In fact, I would suggest you to try to make your own design and just test your creativity. I wouldn't suggest you to just blindly follow this reference, although you can if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend that. Okay, perfect. So I think that is pretty good. I'm just going to select this and bring it down, something like that. Select this and bring this down, and this, and bring this down as well. Now, I know this might be getting a little boring, but unfortunately it is what it is, because most of 3D modeling is actually just trial and error, and you just try different things and see what looks good and what doesn't, and you just do the stuff which looks good. So I think that should be it. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. All right, so one thing which I might do is this part is actually a little too sharp, okay? Because it's going to be foam, right? So it doesn't have to be that sharp. So I'm just going to go to edit mode, and I'm going to be going to the edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting these edges right here, and I'm going to be pressing G twice to turn on the edge slide mode, and I'm going to be sliding these edges a little back. Now if I get out of that, and you're going to see this is looking a lot more smooth, and I'm going to do that same exact thing from the back as well. I think it looks pretty good. Apart from that, mainly our modeling is done, so you can just feel free to make your own adjustments or tweaks if you like, and when you are done with the model, you can move on to the next step. But before that, let me just add my logo right here. So I'm going to add the initial of my name, the initial letter of my name, which is going to be N, because my name is Nafe, if you don't know. Anyway, so I'm just going to add a text, and I'm just going to be going to the front view. Let's rotate it 90 degrees in the x-axis so that it's facing us, and I'm going to be pressing tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to be just typing N. Oops, N. What am I doing? N. And let's go to our text properties, and let's change the font. So I'm just going to go to font, and I'm just going to browse over to a font file. Now, fonts in Blender work a little differently from your regular softwares, like for example Photoshop. You actually have to have your font file for this. Okay, so I'm just going to use this font, Quakeys, I think that's what it's called. I think it's a pretty good font, but in order to get these font files, what you got to do is let's go to a website, for example, like DaFont. This is a pretty good website. They offer free fonts, and you can just select a font and you can just download it. For example, this one right here, Heading Now. And once you have that font downloaded, you can basically select that TTF file. Some fonts will have a TTF file, some will have an OTF file, so you can just have any of those. Now this has TTF file. You can just save this wherever you want, and then you can browse over to that file inside of Blender. So I'm just gonna open this, and you can just press this button right here, and you can browse over to wherever you have that font saved. So that is how you import fonts in Blender. So I'm just going to close this, and once that is done, you're going to see this This letter is here, but it doesn't have any thickness. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to geometry and my text properties, and I'm gonna increase this extrude to something like that. But now you're gonna see that this is very sharp. It's a very sharp letter. So to fix that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this bevel option right here, and I'm gonna increase the depth. Now if I increase it to 0.01, you're gonna see it's way too much, and that's not something we want. So I'm just gonna manually edit this. 0.06, how about that? Something like that should be pretty good for our font, for our logo. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to go to my front view. Let's move it there. Let's rotate it 90 degrees in the z-axis. Oops, not like that. Let's rotate it. Let's first select the global, rotate it 90 degrees in the z-axis. Perfect, but that is not the way we want it to be. RZ minus 90, rotated minus 90 degrees in the x-axis, in the z-axis, sorry. I'm going to go to my front view. I'm going to be placing it something like that. Rotate it like that. Just make sure that it's somewhat similar to this. And just place it something like that. Go to front view. I'm going to be moving it like that. Let's scale it down. I'm going to have the logo something like that. Let's bring this out a little bit so that it's actually visible. Just a tad bit. Just rotate it a little bit. Hold shift for to make very minute adjustments. I think that looks pretty good. Perfect. Let's make sure that it's aligned to the center, which it is. And I think we are good to go with our model. So the modeling part is basically done. I'm going to hide these references. Make sure to hide them in your render view as well, right here, so that they don't actually accidentally show up in your render view. I'm going to hide this in both our views as well, the empty. And I'm going to see our headphones do look pretty good. However, one thing which I'm going to make now is actually, let me just turn these references on. One thing which I forgot to make was actually these wires. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another mesh, which is going to be a cylinder. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to make it tiny, and I'm going to be placing it right there. By the way, this just reminds me that I haven't shaded this smooth, so right click, shade smooth. Just make sure that everything is shaded smooth, because having those weird chunky geometry is not a very good thing. It's not a very good thing to have. So I'm going to be going to my edit mode. I'm going to be scaling this down, placing it right there, rotate it a little bit, something like that, and just be sure to like follow your reference, something like that. Let me first add a subdivision surface modifier to this, something like that. Levels 2, right click, shade smooth, and I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there, and one right there as well. And I'm going to be selecting this, selecting the bottom of this, the bottom face of this, and I'm going to be, oops, and I'm going to be insetting this. So just I, and inset it a little bit. E for extrude, and I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there to make this pretty sharp. And I'm going to be selecting this, and let's just keep extruding this, something like that. Extrude it again and move it to another position like that. Rotate it. I can just select this and I can rotate it as well. Now this is going to be your wire, of course, and just be sure to like make it the way you want. I think it's a little too let me just add a loop cut right there. I'm just going to leave the wire right there because that's not going to be in our frame. The wire seems a little too thin though. I'm just going to increase the size of all this. Something like that might be better. So that's a more prominent wire, and that is perfect. So I'm just going to hide these references for once and for all. And I think we are basically good to go with the model. So if you want to add anything on your own, if you want to add anything extra, then you can feel free to do that. But that is going to be my model, and yeah, I think it looks pretty good.